In the last section, we developed the idea of a logistics strategy and the way that managers implement it to give the structure of supply chains. This figure here summarizes the view of logistics within a single organization, where a series of related activities add value to the final product. These activities have traditionally been managed separately, so that an organization might have distinct departments for purchasing, transport, warehousing, inventory management, distribution, and so on. Unfortunately, dividing up logistics in this way creates a number of problems. When dealing with a particular product, purchasing might look for the most reliable suppliers, inventory management for low unit costs, warehousing for fast stock turnover, materials management for easy handling transport, and so on. These aims are all worthy, but problems soon appear when the separate aims of each activity come into conflict. For example, purchasing can reduce its administrative costs by sending fewer, larger orders to suppliers, but this increases stock levels and raises the amount of money tied up in the warehouse. Similarly, warehousing might save money by reducing the stock of raw materials, but this results in more frequent shortages that raise the costs of expediting and transport for emergency deliveries. Using sea transport rather than air freight reduces transport costs, but increases the amount of stock held in the supply chain. In reality, the different activities of logistics are very closely related, and actions in one inevitably affect the others. A fragmented supply chain also makes it difficult to coordinate the flow of information through different systems. Suppose a production department knows that it is running short of a material and needs a new delivery. This information should pass seamlessly to purchasing, but if it has to pass from one system to another, there is more chance of errors, uncertainty, delays, and inefficiency. These in turn increase the chances of late deliveries, emergency orders, expediting, and shortages. In general, fragmenting logistics into different parts has disadvantages that include setting different, often conflicting objectives within an organization, duplicating effort and reducing productivity, giving worse communication and information flows between the parts, reducing coordination between the parts, leading to lower efficiency, higher costs, and worse customer service. Being unresponsive, as each member of the chain has to identify changes and then start planning their reaction. Increasing uncertainty and delays along the supply chain, increasing variability along the chain, making planning more difficult, introducing unnecessary buffers between the parts, such as stocks of work in progress, spare transport, and duplicated administrative procedures, obscuring important information such as the total cost of logistics. The benefits of integration is that it overcomes these weaknesses. In other words, it sets common objectives, reduces effort, improves information flows, improves efficiency, is responsive to change, reduces uncertainty and variability, makes planning easier, eliminates the need for buffers, highlights important information, and raises the status of logistics as a function. The way to avoid problems with fragmented supply chains is to bring the activities together and consider logistics not as a series of distinct tasks, but as a single integrated function. Then all the parts work together to get the best overall result for the organization and for its customers. The real boost for integrated logistics came with advanced information and control systems. These allow managers to collect, store, analyze, distribute, and present all the information needed by logistics, ranging from its strategic aims down to the details of each transaction. Integration became a realistic possibility when electronic data interchange meant that this information could be exchanged between remote sites and different parts of an organization. As technology has improved, this exchange has become easier. We can summarize the effects of integration in three important observations. The overall performance of the system is important and not the performance of individual parts. The separate activities need not be working optimally to get this best overall performance. There are trade-offs between the different activities. The only way to get efficient logistics is to take a holistic view of the whole function, and surprisingly, the best overall results may be achieved when some activities do not seem to be as efficient as possible. This completes the internal integration of an organization's logistics and moves it from a low-priority, fragmented function that is dispersed throughout a firm to a concentrated, strategic, integrated one. It may be easier to see this change in 7 stages. Stage 1. Separate logistics activities are not given much attention or considered important. Recognition that the separate activities of logistics are important for the success of the company. Making improvements to the separate functions, trying to ensure that each is as efficient as possible. Stage 4. Realizing the benefits of internal cooperation, with a systems view leading to internal integration that combines the separate activities. Stage 5. Developing a logistics strategy to set the long-term direction of logistics. Step 6. Benchmarking to compare logistics performance, learn from others' experiences, identify best practices, find areas that need improvement, and show how to achieve the improvements. And Stage 7. Continuous improvement, accepting that further changes are inevitable and always searching for better ways of organizing logistics. The first 4 stages show the move towards integrated logistics, and the last 3 stages show how the resulting function can be continually improved. What are the difficulties of achieving internal integration? The practical difficulties of achieving these stages vary from organization to organization, but the following list suggests some common ones. Finding a sponsor. Perhaps the obvious difficulty is finding someone with the knowledge, enthusiasm, ability, and authority to carry through the necessary changes. This needs a senior manager who acts as a champion or sponsor, with the necessary power to start the process. Changing practices. Most people feel comfortable with established practices and do not want to change. They do not necessarily welcome change, and there is inevitably some resistance to new practices, methods, skills, knowledge, relationships, and so on. Organization. Most firms are organized into departments, each of which does one type of activity, such as purchasing, transport, warehousing, and so on. This means that everyone in a department focuses on the central activity, and all other kinds of work are largely irrelevant. The implication is that when 2 departments are asked to merge, they feel that they have little in common and would have to divert attention away from their central activity. The result is the silo mentality that stifles interdepartmental cooperation. Cultural changes. A departmental organization is essentially based on a culture of self-interest and conflict, where each can benefit at the expense of others. You can see this effect at discussions of annual budgets where limited funds are shared between all departments, and each can only increase its own share by having others reduce theirs. This has to be replaced by a culture where individuals work together, developing effective teams and cooperating for the common good. Rewards. Traditional goals, performance measures, and rewards are largely based on departmental achievement. This does not encourage integration, which needs rewards that are based on the broad success of logistics in achieving its goals. Information systems. Despite the theoretical ease of transferring information, systems have traditionally been built to support the specialized needs of each department, and especially with remaining legacy systems, are not integrated. An integrated logistics function needs new information flows that cross departmental borders. And last one, hoarding of resources. There is always a temptation for each department to hoard resources, perhaps stock, cash, or information, to safeguard their own position and act as a buffer against unexpected events. This hoarding of resources by individual departments reduces the performance of the whole. Despite such problems, internal integration of logistics is an essential step towards more efficient operations, but it is not the end of the story. Once an organization has efficient, integrated and strategic logistics, it can start looking at integration along more of the supply chain. We describe the benefits of integrating logistics within an organization, but can extend the arguments to suggest the same benefits for integrating logistics along more of a supply chain. If organizations within a supply chain only look at their own operations, there are unnecessary boundaries between them that disrupt the flow of materials and increase costs. In the way that internal integration removes these boundaries within an organization, external integration removes them in the longer chain. Now, as well as internal departments cooperating to improve organizational performance, external firms also cooperate to improve performance in the whole chain. This effectively gives three levels of integration. The first has logistics as a separate activity within an organization. The second has internal integration to bring them together into a single function. And the third has external integration where organizations look beyond their own operations and integrate more of the supply chain. The lowest levels are characterized by arm's length relationships between supply chain partners, while the third level has cooperation that might be formalized in strategic alliances and partnerships. External integration is difficult and develops over time. You can imagine this starting with two companies reducing transport costs by coordinating their flows of materials. Over time, the integration may progress from the coordination of physical movements to information flows, control over material movements, and then to the design and working of the infrastructure. The key point about integration is that all organizations in the same supply chain have the same overall objective, which is to satisfy their final customers. Essentially, all members want to sell more products to final customers, thereby giving extra benefits that can be shared by members of the chain. If any part of the supply chain fails to work towards this, then the whole supply chain suffers. An important effect of a fragmented supply chain, which has become known as demand amplification, is the bullwhip effect. Imagine a retailer who notices that in 1 week demand for a product rises by 5 units. When it is time to place the next order, the retailer assumes that demand is rising and orders 10 extra units to make sure there is enough stock. The local wholesaler sees demand rise by 10 units, so it assumes that demand is rising and orders an extra 20 units to meet the growth. The regional wholesaler sees demand rise by 20 units, so it orders another 30 units. As this movement travels through the supply chain, a relatively small change in the final demand is amplified into a major variation for early suppliers. We could continue giving examples of the benefits of external integration, but it is becoming clear that the benefits include common objectives for all parts of the supply chain and genuine cooperation to achieve these objectives, shared information to highlight important events and reduce uncertainty, errors and delays, improved material flow with coordination giving faster and more reliable movements, lower costs due to balanced operations, lower stocks, less expediting, removal of duplicated efforts, elimination of activities, and so on. Better customer service, with shorter lead times, faster deliveries, and more customization. Improved broader performance, with more accurate forecasts, better planning, higher productivity of resources, and so on. More flexibility, with organizations reacting faster to changing conditions. Standardized procedures, becoming routine and well practiced with less duplication of effort, information, planning, and so on. replenishment and movements triggered by actual demand rather than forecasts. The benefits of external integration are clear, and the move towards greater integration might appear inevitable. But this is not always the best model, and neither integration nor discrete arm's length relationships are intrinsically better. It is often more effective to have elements of both. Even when integration would offer clear benefits, there can be many practical difficulties. For instance, organizations may simply not trust other members of the supply chain enough to share sensitive information. When there is enough trust, there can be problems with different aims, priorities, competition, data exchange, appropriate system skills, and so on. Here are some of the obstacles to integration. Incentives, where different parts of the chain have different aims and are rewarded for different types of performance. Information processing, caused by imperfection in the data or means of transmission. Operational, as members have different types of operations that are often incompatible. Pricing, which distorts demand such as quantity discounts or promotions. And behavior, with different cultures and ways of doing things. As each member of a supply chain is owned and managed by a different legal entity with its own interests, aims, operations, culture, and so on, it is not surprising that external integration can be difficult. An initial step has members of the supply chain recognizing that they share the same overriding aim of satisfying final customer. This might seem obvious, but it means that trading partners have to overcome the traditional adversarial view. When an organization pays more money to its suppliers, people assume that one can only benefit at the expense of the other. If the organization gets a good deal, it automatically means that the supplier is losing out. If the supplier makes a good profit, it means that the organization pays too much. The result is uncertainty about the number and size of orders, constantly changing suppliers and customers, changing products and conditions, different times between orders, no guarantee of repeat orders, and changing costs. To avoid these problems, organizations have to recognize that it is in their own long-term interest to replace conflict by agreement. Cooperation brings trading partners together, and this trend is associated with the growth of customer relationship management and, to a lesser extent, to supplier relationship management, illustrated in this figure. Supplier relationship management and customer relationship management are very similar in principle, so we'll consider them together in terms of customer relationship management. This is a broad term which covers all aspects of the ways that companies manage their relationships with downstream customers. The principle is that when customers have a bad experience dealing with a company, they move to another supplier. Customer relationship management aims to improve the experience to retain customers and ensure repeat business. A standard view says that this needs three types of activities. Support systems that allow sales departments to improve the service their representatives give to customers. Direct communications with customers that do not involve salespeople, such as websites or electronic data interchange. Analysis of customer and sales data. At the heart of customer relationship management systems are the databases and software to support these activities. To be more specific, the systems are primarily aimed at marketing, doing the planning to identify target customers, products to offer, prices, and so on. Sales, such as dealing with the pre-sale arrangements, actual purchases, order processing and delivery. And service, which focus on the level of customer service, achievement of performance targets, and so on. An alliance and whether it could actually be a partner in a successful relationship. The third stage compares the potential partners, selects the best, and starts contract negotiations. When these are successful, it is time to start the alliance, work with it, continually monitor progress, and make adjustments and improvements. There are three elements of alliances: drivers, which are the reason for forming alliances; facilitators in the environment that support this move; and components, which are the joint activities that constitute the alliance. Drivers, which are the compelling reasons for forming relationships, such as increased efficiency, cost reduction, improved customer service, profit growth, or security. Both partners must believe that they will get such benefits over the long term, but they may not look for the same benefits or equal ones. Facilitators, which are the supportive corporate factors that encourage partnerships, such as compatibility of operations, similar management styles, common aims, mutual skills, openness of communications, and so on. Without this support, an alliance cannot develop, even when there are strong drivers. Components, which are the joint activities and operations used to build and sustain the relationship, such as communication channels, joint planning, shared risk and rewards, and investment. Components turn the ideas of an alliance into reality through actual operations and results. Drivers and facilitators are the means for forming an alliance, while the components keep it going. After this, the alliance delivers results, and if these meet expectations, the alliance continues. However, it is always possible to get disappointing returns, and when either party is unsatisfied, the alliance will not last. This is an important point, as alliances may bring considerable benefits in some circumstances, but they are certainly not always the best answer. Some people suggest that there is a difference between strategic alliances, which are long-term contractual relationships, and partnerships, which they say involve some kind of shared ownership. This is not a generally accepted distinction, but it does suggest that when an organization wants to go beyond partnerships, it has to own more of the supply chain. A common arrangement for this has one company taking a minority share in other. Then it has some say in their operations, but it does not necessarily control them. A manufacturer, for example, might take a minority share in a wholesaler to get some influence in the way that its products are distributed, or a retailer may take a minority share in a transport company to influence its delivery policies. Another option is for two organizations to start a joint venture, where they both put up funds to start a third company with shared ownership. Perhaps a manufacturer and supplier might together form a transport company for moving materials between the two. This gives a mechanism for exerting control over the third party while sharing the risks and benefits. However, the most common arrangement has one organization simply buying another, adjacent member of the supply chain. This increases its level of vertical integration. Vertical integration describes the amount of a supply chain that is owned by one organization. If an organization buys materials from outside suppliers and sells products to external customers, it does not own much of the supply chain and has little vertical integration, as shown here. If the organization owns its sources of initial supply, does most of the value-adding operations, and distributes products through to final customer, it owns a lot of the supply chain and is highly vertically integrated. When the organization owns a lot of the supply side or upstream activities, it has backward integration. When it owns a lot of the distribution network or downstream activities, it has forward integration. In some circumstances, vertical integration is the best way of getting different parts of the supply chain to work together. For instance, when Ford of America was growing quickly, the only way that it could guarantee supplies was to own everything from steel mills through to distributor networks and repair shops. This reduces uncertainty, makes sure that all operations are synchronized, can lower costs, gives opportunities for more value-adding and profit, has common aims, and so on. But most organizations do not have so much integration, and they focus on a narrower set of their own strengths, in the way that Ford now focuses on the actual assembly of cars. The drawbacks with the vertical integration are that it is very expensive, leads to huge diversified organizations that spread their resources too thinly needs to combine specialized skills that one organization does not have, becomes too bureaucratic, and has less flexibility to respond to changing conditions. So, vertical integration is not necessarily desirable, and realistically it is often impossible for even the biggest organizations to own much of their supply chains.